Hello and welcome to another episode of Coaching on the Go. As you can tell, I am in my car, and what I thought I would do in today's episode is answer one of my viewers' questions. I have a question coming in, actually multiple questions coming in, and it was like I started to see the same question being answered or being asked, and the question was about dealing with rejection, and more specifically, well, how do I deal with rejections from higher ups? You know, higher ups meaning your managers or your supervisors or maybe that CEO. So when you are working for a company, no doubt that if you want to affect change, if you want to be a change maker in your organization, you will need to get buy-in. But sometimes you have a great idea and your idea is researched and you may get vetoed from higher ups. Maybe they reject you and you may not always know their reasons why, because they may not always share those reasons with you. So if you've ever brought a new idea to the higher ups in your workplace only to be vetoed or have your idea shut down, or maybe you heard all the reasons why it wouldn't work, then this video is for you, right? So the most common yearnings that people have for their career is they want to be seen and they want to be heard, they want to be respected, which means that if they have a good idea, they want to have a space to share it, a platform to share it, and for them to know that there is a potential that we're going to implement this idea. It may have to be refined, but we all want to be seen and heard. So what do you do? So the first thing I want to address is really what is going on. What's going on when the higher ups, when they reject our ideas, what's really going on? And the biggest mistake that employees make is they make it about them, right? If they receive a veto or a rejection from a higher up, the first thing that it's so easy to feel that, well, I'm not good enough then. My ideas aren't good enough. I'm just not being respected in the workplace. Right, so I'm here and I submit to you that that is not the case, and there is no evidence for that to be the case. What's really going on when the higher ups are rejecting your ideas is not because of you. It's not because you're a bad person or your ideas are not good. Really what's happening is a cognitive bias. Right, so a cognitive bias are these ideals, these perceptions we have in our minds because they've been programmed there. Before you even got there, they've been programmed there. And one of the things that's happening is a status quo bias. When people reject ideas, it necessarily means that a change is going to happen. A new idea means that a change is going to happen. And people often defend the status quo. And the status quo bias is one type of bias that involves people preferring that things stay the same. Right? Whatever the current state of affairs is, they want them to remain the same. And why is that, right? Because change is scary. Change can be a very scary thing for people. And when changes do occur, people tend to perceive them as a loss or a detriment or a risk that you have to take. Because a risk does, and many risks do have to be taken, especially if an organization is at stake. Right? And so as they consider the choices, right, people focus more on what they stand to lose rather than how they might benefit. And that is the foundational piece of the status quo bias. And so this tendency for focusing more on loss is also called loss aversion bias. So it's this potential for loss that stands out in our minds more prominently than the potential for gains. And that's what happens when we get caught up in not wanting change. And so we reject new ideas that come towards us, even if those ideas do have benefits, but the potential for loss stands out more prominently. Right? So that's really what's going on. The most amazing thing about this behavior is that our minds still choose the status quo out of fear, even if the present situation is dissatisfying. So here you are, you're presenting your idea to the higher ups, and you're wanting and you're having the best interest of the firm or best interest of the team in mind. They reject your idea. They may not give you the reasons or justifications why. And the first thing you think is, why not? Why won't you accept my ideas? Why won't you at least listen to me or respect me enough to listen to me? When I know that what I have to say is going to change things for the better. It's going to improve things for the better because things have to change. Things aren't ideal right now, and you know it, right? You know it. Things aren't ideal right now. So that might be going through your mind. And that's the thing. What I'm telling you is that the loss aversion bias, the status quo bias, we focus on the losses more prominently, even if the current situation is dissatisfactory. Right? So that's really what's going on. So it's not about you. It's not necessarily about you. That's the most amazing thing. You see, so the status quo bias is related to having a conservative mindset, right? People who are conservative, they tend to keep focusing on traditions, keeping the things the way they are. If they're not broken, why change them, right? If they aren't broken. So on one hand, it's protective because you're protecting yourself from perceived harm by avoiding the risk that might be associated with taking that change. But you're also shielding yourself from the possible benefits as well. Right? And so avoiding risks in loss aversion is one cause of status quo bias. That's one cause of it. The search for certainty is another cause, right? Especially because people are facing impending change. They want certainty. Certainty is one of those human universal yearnings. We want certainty. We want safety and security. And so presenting an idea that can change everything or change a lot of things goes against the grain of the human desire for certainty. So understanding human nature will help you to be able to communicate in a way that is more effective. Right? And so one of the biggest mistakes that employees make when they're trying to get their ideas across is they try harder. Right? Being persistent. You must have received that advice. Just be persistent. Try harder. Convince them more. That is the worst advice ever. To be persistent, because being persistent at something that doesn't work is the same thing as trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It's the same thing. So why would you be persistent at something that doesn't work? Being persistent at that will only cause adversarial responses. What happens is someone who is in that status quo bias or loss aversion bias, if you are more persistent at trying to convince them, they will defend their objections even more, or even worse, they will come up with even more objections to your new ideas or your new defenses. So then it just becomes a rat race, and that spiral will cause you to have a separation between the winners and the losers, and you will not be on the winning team because they are your higher ups. They have the final say. So you don't want to cause that separation. You don't want to cause there to be a decision between who wins and who loses, right? And so persistence, anyone who's told you to be persistent, that's a bad advice. You don't want to persist on something that doesn't work because it's only going to cause them to defend even more, right? Being persistent is adversarial. Right, and so now I've presented to you the cause of it. Why does this keep happening? Why do people reject ideas that have the potential for a beneficial change? I've presented that from a psychological standpoint, and there's a lot of research around that cognitive bias. So now I want to present to you, what can you do? What do you do if you still recognize that you have a desire to serve, you have a desire to add value, and you know that what you have is going to produce a benefit, a beneficial outcome to your team or the organization or the firm at which you work? If you believe so much in what you do, and you have a good heart, and you have well intentions, you have a moral obligation to still sell your idea. You have a moral obligation and a responsibility to still get that idea out there in front of the people who have the authority and the influence to implement. Okay, so the advice is not to give up. In fact, that's not what you want to do. You don't want to give up. So here's what you can do. There is only one approach that will address the status quo bias, that will avoid the loss aversion bias. There's only one response that you can take on, and here it is. Instead of being persistent, instead of being convincing or trying to be charming or trying to be more persuasive, what you need to implement is curiosity. You see, curiosity is not adversarial. Curiosity is inviting. It is influential. It is not saying that things need to change because they're not good. It is saying, what is the problem here? What is the obstacle? What's standing in the way? And the thing is not to be interrogating. Is you're not being curious if you're interrogating. What I'm talking about is genuine curiosity. And you are being genuinely curious, and you're coupling your curiosity with care, concern, and compassion. So there's 4 C's for you. Curiosity with care, concern, and compassion. That's genuine curiosity. When you ask questions, right? Genuine curiosity is the influential response to resistance. It's the influential response to resistance. And it doesn't require that you have positional authority. It does not require that. You can ask questions even if you're not the manager. You can ask questions even if you're not the supervisor. You can ask questions even if you're not a senior position in the company. You don't have to have positional authority to be curious, right? So you can be influential even without positional authority. Even if your job title doesn't require it, doesn't say you have authority, it doesn't matter. You can still influence. Right? You can do it simply from your current role, simply by asking questions. Now I'm going to give you a framework on questions that you can ask. Okay, so here's where the questions are. So for example, you can ask, tell me more. That's not a question, it is an inviting statement, but it is genuine curiosity. Well, tell me more about that. Because they're going to give you their objections. They're going to defend their position, so you can ask them to tell you more. And it'll give you insight into what they're thinking and insight into how you can have more empathy for them, right? Here's another question. What else? Right? Invite them to tell you more. What else? What else is bothering you? You know, what else do you see that can go wrong? What else do you see that where we lack resources? Where else can you see that we don't have the manpower? What else? Here's another question. What is important? What's important to you? What would you say is important for our company this quarter? What would you say is important for the growth of our team? What would you say is important to move us out of this state that we're in? What would you say is important for us to overtake the rising competition in the marketplace? What else is important? Here's another question you can ask. What are you trying to achieve? What are we trying to achieve as a team? What are we trying to achieve as a company? What are we trying to achieve now compared to what we were trying to achieve last year? See, these are influential questions. You see, when people won't hear your ideas until you hear and you understand theirs. Let me say that again. People will not hear you. They will choose not to listen to you. They will not hear your ideas until you hear and you understand theirs. And the only way that you can hear and understand theirs is if you exercise genuine curiosity. And when you couple curiosity with caring and concern, you create the space for listening to them. And you create the space to uncover the truth of their objections. They may or may not tell you why they object, but they will tell you their objections. You will know they're objecting your ideas, but you can uncover the truth of their objections. Not what they say, but what they really meant. If you exercise genuine curiosity, you will get to the truth of it without creating resentment. That's what genuine curiosity does, and that's why it is an influential stance, right? And so listening is more influential always than telling. Listening is always more influential than telling, especially when you are trying to earn their attention and consideration for your new ideas. Okay, so in closing, what I want to do is to tell you how you can implement it. I've given you examples of questions, examples of what curiosity sounds like. So now I'm going to give you some steps on how to implement this curiosity, right? You can use it to get them to become aware of the consequences of status quo. You're not going to tell them they're in status quo bias, of course, because that will implement adversary in them, right? But implementing it will help you to use it to help them to gain more awareness of the consequences of things staying the same, and therefore they will open up to opportunity. So here's the step. Step one is you approach it from the standpoint of, okay, I see why that won't work, right? I see what won't work. Acknowledge their resistance. And so you ask them what might work. You get their standpoint. And from that, you can glean what their objections are, the truth of what their objections are. That's the first step. The second step, then, you say, well, I see why things should stay the same. Again, you acknowledge their need for predictability, for certainty and safety, right? So you see it, I see why things should stay the same. Now, what are some reasons why we might want to change? It's an introduction to an opportunity, right? So that's the second step. The third step is, what do your best aspirations tell you we might try? What do your best aspirations tell you that we might try? So it's acknowledging that they have aspirations and that they are capable of wanting more for their organization. your best aspirations. So you're acknowledging that they have the best interests of the team at mind. They have the best interests of the company, and you're trusting their aspirations. You're trusting them to lead the vision and guide the vision. So that's why that is influential and not adversarial. So that's the third step. The fourth step now, listen to this. The fourth step is now, what happens if we choose to do nothing? And this question is important. You don't ask this first, you ask this fourth, because asking it first is adversarial. But once you've gained their trust by all those other questions, now when you ask them, what happens when we do nothing? It becomes brainstorming. It becomes helping them to get connected to the consequences of not changing. Gently, and you're doing it gently out of care and curiosity and concern. You're helping them to realize that if they don't do anything, what's going to happen? Because maybe they haven't thought about that yet. Or maybe they haven't thought about it quite that way yet. So that's the fourth step. The fifth step, now listen to this. The fifth step is this. Where will we be in 6 months if we stay the course? Now you're putting a timeline onto it, right? You're asking them, and 6 months is very easy to visualize. Well, where will we be? And so when you ask, where will we be? You're saying we, which implies that you care about the team and you're a part of it, right? So you're future pacing your involvement in the team because you're still going to be there 6 months, but you're asking them to explore, where will we be 6 months from now if we stay the course? Which shows that you're willing to stay the course if that is their best aspiration, but you want to talk to them about what's going to happen if we stay the course. So then therefore it is an environment, an encouragement, and an influence for them to explore the consequences of staying to the status quo bias. See, so this is a 6-step process of how you can implement genuine curiosity out of care and concern to influence them to listen to and hear your ideas. But you can't get there until you hear theirs. And you also can't get there until you get to the truth of their objections, because they may not tell you what their objections are, or they might tell you in the beginning that they object and you know what they say, but you don't know the meaning behind what they say. So in order for them to open up and to tell you the truth behind their objections, you need to have genuine curiosity. Right, so I hope this helps. And if what I'm saying to you makes sense, right? And I hope you've taken notes. And if what I've said makes sense, right, I want you to comment below. Which question gave you that aha moment, right? Which question in my 6-step process really resonated with you? Comment below. And how are you going to implement that today? Right? Just start simple by practicing curiosity with a friend. And then with curiosity, observe how they open up to you. Observe how they are more connected and how they trust, and how you can build trust with genuine curiosity. Because remember, even if they are your higher ups, the point is not to be intimidated by them. The point is to work with them on a team. The point is to recognize that people will only do something if they feel like doing it. No matter who, don't care who you are, CEO, senior manager, VP, they will only feel like doing something. They will only do something if they feel like doing it. So then your role, and you don't have to have positional authority to do this, your role is to get them to feel like doing it, because you believe so much in what you do. And that's why you have the moral obligation to still present your idea, because you have the best interest of your team in mind, right? So if you are listening to this right now, you resonate with what I'm saying, give me a thumbs up as well. And I invite you to comment, to give me your comments and ask any questions as well. Right, submit any questions. I love to answer them in a video like this, or in another type of video. I will answer your questions. And also remember to give me a like, subscribe to my channel, ring that bell so that you can receive a notification each time I upload a new video. So thank you for joining me in my ride today, and I will chat with you again in the next video.